See, it doesn't count as an expletive if you leave part of it in part 1. Anyways, this game has problems with its aim. You feel it in normal gameplay, but you really feel it in the sniper sections. It feels like the game is constantly twisting a mouse acceleration setting in random directions. Also, when you aren't actively aiming in the sniper, your character hides so far behind cover you'll have a hard time seeing what you're aiming for. It makes sense, but is not the case any other time you use cover. Anyways, one fake out shot at Elise later and the happy couple are reunited with a young Wesley. Unfortunately, seconds later, the big bad misses his shot and hits Elise. This level goes on so long it's easy to forget it's actually a flashback happening in the present timeline. I think that's partially because despite featuring an escort quest, turret section, and sniper section, Cross's first level is way more fun than Wesley's first and second level. The third level is Russian's Last Dance, set in Chicago today. Well, I doubt the latter, considering the game will be a decade old in a few months. Is this a tacit admission they figured no one would bother playing this after 2009? Or were they worried the player wouldn't be able to keep up with the game's narrative Christ. Don't get me started on that narrative structure stuff again. After that Battlefield 3 video, we're lucky I don't have to draw charts for every game I play. So how does no one notice Wesley entering the courtyard? It's broad daylight. Am I supposed to believe these guys are threats? Actually, let's stick with this cutscene for a moment because it is one of the game's many unfortunate victims of compression. All the cutscenes are pre-rendered lovingly to a highly compressed 1280 by 720p, and when being cast on my monitor that is 4 times the resolution can result in a lot of blurriness and artifacting. And since these are pre-rendered Bing files, they take the game a second to load up, resulting in empty black periods with no audio lasting about a second at the beginning and end of every cutscene that I had to cut out for the kill counter video. I don't particularly understand this common development shortcut beyond maybe they weren't able to get the diesel engine to play in-game cutscenes. The advantages of pre-rendered is that you can have higher fidelity and better animation, both of which are not the case since it uses in-game assets.
Why is this a game? I don't know.
Wes destroyed this place in the climax of the last movie, but since that doesn't count, he's just exploring an abandoned building full of French people. While he does that, let's talk about the developer, GRIN. GRIN is a Swedish developer. Well, GRIN was a Swedish developer. At some point, they shed their skin and metamorphosized into Overkill, the company behind all that Payday 2 DLC and also Payday 2. They went bankrupt after releasing Weapons of Fate in 2009. Now, to be fair, they also released Bionic Commando and Terminator Salvation at the same time. 2 games that have now earned a slightly higher place on my shit list of games I'll probably consider covering out of pure malice for the quote-unquote talent behind it. And also because they came in my favorite time period, the 7th console generation. Although that might be giving the Swedes too much representation in my videos, GRIN and DICE have tied Sweden with France for most representation in game development studios on my channel. A small accomplishment perhaps, but one nonetheless. By now, Wesley should have caught up to the Russian guy we're chasing. This boss fight isn't really fun because he can take your health pretty fast from across the room with a shotgun. You get 1 point for having a shotgun that can shoot farther than canned air, and immediately lose 1 point for having a boss that mandates the usage of cover. Cover in this game is a sticky subject, and I say that because it's almost impossible to get it to let go of you once you're in it. You'll see times where I rapidly switch between several pieces of cover, and it's almost never intentional on my part. I play the game on the Pussy difficulty, which is the game's easy mode because it best captures the feeling of Wanted, that being a fast-paced shooter where you kill tons of people and go really, really fast, and not, say, a tactical cover-based shooter where you crawl to the objective. I should feel insulted by the game calling me a pussy for playing on the difficulty that made editing the kill counter easiest. You should know I played Modern Warfare on its hardest difficulty just because its checkpoints were seamless, while I played Battlefield 3 on its easiest difficulty because seamlessly editing its deaths was going to put me into a conniption. Here, the hardest difficulty is basically just amping up the amount of damage enemies do so they can force you to use the cover system, which just isn't very much fun. But I don't feel very insulted at all just because there are two ways to go about difficulty properly. Either make it a legitimate challenge that is fun to undertake, or allow the player to set the difficulty so that the player can enjoy the game at a pace they have fun at. Weapons of Fate isn't a legitimate challenge. The only challenge to it is having the endurance of bullshit necessary to complete the game. And I can't really blame someone for tapping out before the halfway mark and going to play literally anything else. After the Russian guy is defeated, who implies we came to fuck somebody's corpse but doesn't clarify who, another of many lines that doesn't make sense without the movie, Wesley notices a binary code on his arm and decides to take the arm with him. I guess he couldn't find anything to just write the code down on. Why it isn't binary is again another movie question, as is what organization this building belongs to and the significance of this loom thing everybody is talking about. Wes heads outside and the old guy says,
"My, Wesley. You've taken to all this rather quickly, haven't you?"
Which is a very, very confusing line if, like me, the game was your first taste of Wanted. Given the way the game has been portraying events, what with Wesley taking vacations to the slaughterhouse between missions, you'd be forgiven for thinking Wesley was just a local psychopath who'd finally found an outlet for all those urges he'd been feeling. The line doesn't make sense in the game, but even with the context of the movie, it doesn't make much sense either, considering Wesley had already been murdering people for some time and was pretty desensitized to the violence at that point. And it's back to the warehouse, for Wesley has another move he's going to learn: enhanced combat movement. It's basically just cover-to-cover movement system, but with added bullet time. This only compounds the cover problem for multiple reasons. 1. It's assuming the player actually uses the cover system in the first place, which is a pretty big assumption. 2. It costs 2 points of adrenaline, where those 2 points could have been used for 2 curved shots, making it a steep price. And 3. The game is already really easy on its hardest difficulty setting if you are using cover, so adding in bullet time to make the game even easier to play feels really excessive. And never mind the segments of gameplay where the player enters a slow motion rail shooter.
What's done?
It's like a movie. Actually, my involvement is nothing.
The player can shoot bullets out of the air like in the movie, but since seeing a bullet in mid-air is somewhere in the realm of impossibility, the game has to magnify them to the size of 40mm shells to compensate. Yes, this is all very exciting, but it's not very fun or engaging. I don't really even have a way of fixing it short of doing the following. 1. Increase the amount of adrenaline the player has. 2. Decrease the relative cost of bullet time. 3. Make the player able to shoot bullets in bullet time. 4. Make the combat necessitate a healthy balance of curving shots and bullet time to thrive in. 5. Remove the cover system, forcing the player to commit to exposure when in the open. And that's not even the half of it, but by this time you'd have a game that plays radically different. It's why I stick to minor tweaks that improve the overall game, because it is very easy for me to give you a laundry list of changes and detail how I design the game, but I'm not a game designer, I'm a critic. Between missions, the game pops up a static image informing you of the abilities you've unlocked, right after seeing the player unlock them. If you're a game dev watching this, write that down on your list of things never to do. The next mission is aboard an airplane above the Alps in the year 2005. Let's see. 2005 minus 1984 gives me 21 years. It's taken 21 years for Cross to track down just the spotter of the sniper who shot his lover. And for some reason, he's sitting in the driver's seat of his car in the cargo hold of the plane. And nobody looks a day older. That's just one of those things the writer hopes you don't think about.
They'll kill all the passengers just to try and get me.
Well, that seems excessive, especially considering it seems largely unnecessary. If I were the Franks, I'd say there's a hijacker on board, and to stop him, we're letting the 38 heavily armed marshals sitting among you engage him in a shootout. That's the exact number, by the way. Cross kills the 38 men and fights his way to the front, where he figures out that there will be parachutes and a way off the plane, but uh-oh. Hey, say, Cross, why'd you take your mask off? It wouldn't happen to be because they pre-rendered the cutscene first and then changed the level to have a masked protagonist to hide the fact that half the levels you played as Cross in the demo, would it? The one thing I want to focus on is that Cross brings up his son he had with Elise, Wesley. That seems to be needlessly endangering his son, and I can't exactly imagine where he was expecting the conversation to go when he brought him up. But as though on cue, the Immortal here, that's seriously his name, pulls out a bullet with Wesley's name on it. I guess there is significance to having a bullet with someone's name on it, literally, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the magical loom of fate that determines people to kill. Cross, recognizing the threat, goes to shoot him, but instead of just pulling the trigger and instantly ending it, he goes to curve shot somebody at point blank range. Now, I am guilty of doing this to some extent in the gameplay, but I don't think the situation merits it. And as if this entire situation wasn't stupid enough, the Immortal responds by also curving his shot, and the bullets hit each other in midair. And then, instead of either party just lighting the other the fuck up, the Immortal gloats about it and closes the door that has several bullet holes in it already, proving that it is penetrable and therefore can be shot through. And Cross decides, rather than trying to shoot and kill the man who threatened his son, to try and bust down the door. And then, just to top everything off, Cross says,
I can't fly, you asshole, but I can drive.
Like, seriously, buddy? I have to commend you for being an optimist and making the best out of a bad situation, but if you walked into this situation knowing they might crash the plane with no survivors, then it might have crossed your mind to come prepared with a fucking parachute and not try on-site procurement as your escape a crashing plane strategy. Whatever. Cross climbs up the plane in a pre-scripted sequence and gets to the car. He then somehow gets the car out of the plane and... Yeah, okay, whatever. Over the course of the game, I keep forgetting that these are mid-conversation flashbacks we're dealing with. The old guy explains that he's meeting a buyer of 100 more Wesley-themed bullets and that Wes should tag along for the buy. He does, which brings us to the level Shut the Fuck Up I mentioned in part 1. Just thought I'd clarify again that yes, the level is named that. So Wes is sniping, which means he's absolutely terrible at it. I just noticed in writing that it seems to be a theme of the game that nobody except the player who is actively controlling the character can hit what they're aiming at with a sniper rifle. Although in Wes's case, it's due to his 1-second reaction time, not realizing the ideal moment to at least go for a collateral or at least kill one of his targets in one shot. Then we get a strange shot of zooming in on a window. Now, I know why this happens with the context of the movie, but the game doesn't explain the rather strange powers the character possess. To be fair, I guess the movie didn't explain this particular power either, so no points off for that.
Cubicles. God damn. I was kinda hoping that becoming a super assassin meant I'd never have to see them again.